He had everything, except true love. Jonathan was born with what most people spend their lives chasing: wealth, status, opportunity. His family owned a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. He grew up in mansions, attended elite schools, vacationed in places most people only see in magazines. By 30, he'd inherited his father's company and doubled its worth. He was brilliant, successful, and according to every magazine profile, one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. He was also desperately lonely. I know this because Jonathan is now my husband. But when we first met, I thought he was the most arrogant, out-of-touch person I'd ever encountered. I was working as a waitress at an upscale restaurant, trying to make ends meet while finishing my nursing degree. It was one of 3 jobs I juggled to pay tuition and keep my tiny apartment. I was exhausted, broke, and running on coffee and determination. Jonathan came in with a group of business associates. Important people, the kind who didn't see service workers as actual human beings. They snapped their fingers, made impossible demands, complained about everything. Jonathan was the worst. He sent his steak back twice, asked me to list every ingredient in every dish, and barely looked up from his phone when I spoke to him. When they left, the tip was insulting. $50 on a $1,000 bill. I was so frustrated I almost cried. That $50 was groceries for 2 weeks or not, depending on how many shifts I could pick up. An hour later, Jonathan came back alone. "I need to apologize," he said, standing awkwardly by the host stand. "I was rude earlier. And the tip? That wasn't me. My colleagues calculated it, and I should have noticed and corrected it." He handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 cash. "You don't have to," I started. "I know," he interrupted. "But you were kind despite how we treated you, and that deserves to be acknowledged. Thank you for your service." Then he left. I didn't expect to see him again. Men like that don't exist in worlds like mine. But 2 weeks later, he came back, alone this time. He sat in my section and ordered coffee. "I'm Jonathan," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "And I realize I never asked your name last time." "Anna," I said, confused about why a billionaire was making small talk with me. He came back every week after that. Always alone. Always sitting in my section. He'd order something simple, coffee, a sandwich. And he'd ask about my day, my studies, my life. Really ask, like he genuinely cared about the answers. "Why do you keep coming here?" I finally asked one night. "This clearly isn't your scene." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because you're the first person in years who talks to me like I'm just a person. Not a dollar sign, not a business opportunity, not a status symbol. Just a person." I forgot what that felt like. We started talking more. He'd wait until my shift ended, and we'd get coffee at the diner across the street. He told me about growing up wealthy, how isolating it was, how every friendship felt transactional. How women dated him for his money, business partners pretended to like him for access, even his family seemed to value him more for what he could provide than who he was. "I have everything," he said, "and I've never felt more alone." I told him about growing up with nothing, about my mom who cleaned houses to put food on the table, about working 3 jobs to afford an education. About being invisible to people like him my entire life. "You're not invisible to me," he said quietly. We fell in love slowly. He didn't try to impress me with his wealth. He didn't take me to fancy restaurants or buy me expensive gifts. We'd walk in the park, get cheap takeout, talk for hours about everything and nothing. When he finally told me who he really was, not just wealthy, but Jonathan Chen, the Jonathan Chen, I almost walked away. "You lied to me," I said, hurt. "I never lied," he said desperately. "I just didn't lead with my last name because everyone treats me differently when they know. You saw me, Anna. Just me. Not my money or my name or what I could do for you. That's so rare I wanted to protect it as long as I could. I understood. But it was hard. His world was so different from mine. When I met his family, they looked at me like I was a gold digger. His friends didn't understand what he saw in the waitress. Business associates warned him I was after his fortune. Let them talk, Jonathan said. "I know the truth. You're the only person who's ever loved me for me." But the pressure was intense. I'd show up to events in a borrowed dress while everyone else wore couture. I'd mispronounce fancy food and wine names. I didn't understand the inside jokes or cultural references of people who'd summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. "I don't belong in your world," I told him one night after a particularly brutal charity gala where I'd overheard people mocking me. "Then we'll build our own world," he said. And we did. Jonathan stepped back from public life. We moved to a smaller house in a normal neighborhood. He still ran his company, but he worked from home. We lived simply, quietly, away from the spotlight that had followed him his entire life. His family was appalled. "You're throwing your life away for a girl with nothing," his mother said. "I'm building a life with a woman who values me," he corrected. "For the first time ever, I'm happy. If you can't accept that, it says more about you than it does about her." Some people thought he was crazy. The headlines when we got engaged were brutal. "Tech billionaire marries waitress, the gold digger and the genius." What was he thinking? But we didn't care. On our wedding day, small ceremony, close friends only, Jonathan gave a toast that made me cry. "Everyone told me I could have anyone I wanted," he said. "They were wrong. I wanted someone who wanted me, not what I could buy them. I wanted someone who saw my soul, not my bank account. I wanted someone real, and honest, and kind. And I found her serving coffee while juggling 3 jobs and a dream. Anna didn't save me from loneliness. She showed me what it means to be truly seen, truly valued, truly loved. And that's worth more than all the money in the world." We've been married for 5 years now. I finished nursing school. I work at a children's hospital, doing exactly what I always dreamed of. Jonathan still runs his company but donates most of his money to causes we care about. We live comfortably, but not extravagantly. People still judge us. They assume I'm with him for money, that he's with me for, I don't even know what. Some kind of savior complex, I guess. But here's the truth, Jonathan had everything except true love. And I had nothing except the ability to see people for who they really are. Together, we found something neither of us knew we were missing: partnership, respect, genuine connection. Money can buy a lot of things. But it can't buy someone who loves you at your worst, who chooses you over comfort, who sees past the surface to the person underneath. Jonathan taught me that wealth doesn't insulate you from loneliness. And I taught him that love isn't something you can purchase or earn. It's something you build, day by day, with someone who values you for exactly who you are. He had everything. I had nothing. And somehow, together, we found everything that actually matters. True love doesn't care about bank accounts or social status or where you came from. It cares about who you are, how you treat people, whether you can be real in a world full of pretense. Jonathan found love in a poor woman not because he wanted to save me, but because I was the first person who didn't need him to be anything other than himself. And I found love in a rich man not because of what he could give me, but because he saw me when the rest of the world looked right through me. That's the kind of love worth having. And no amount of money could ever buy it. If this story touched you even a little, hit subscribe. This channel is where real stories live. Stories that remind you that love, pain, healing, and hope still exist. Subscribe and join me for the next diary entry.